their instinct is to be quiet, is to keep stuff close to the chest, is to not be clear, not have a vision that's publicly communicated, and therefore that no one can help to support. And the only reason why this is a story, the only reason why this is potentially an issue is either through complete lack of clarity, or through someone's gross incompetence in terms of understanding what was unfolding within their organization and presumably under their nose. But we don't know because of that first problem. And the same goes for you at home, folks. You if you're interested in what we have to say, presumably you're interested in what CIfA might have to say on things. And in this instance, once again, I think that their instinct hasn't served them well. Hello, and welcome back to Watching Brief for the week of the 10th of February, 2025. I'm joined as ever by my co-host, Mr. Andy Brockman. And this week we are aghast, agog. We are stunned, shocked, surprised.
Baffled even. We're archaeologists.
Even baffled by a level of
batshit craziness.
Yeah, that's a good one. Strangeness, professional meandering. You could even say eccentricity that UK archaeology has a reputation. Management of UK archaeology has a reputation for sometimes doing things in its own unique, special way. But this week really set a new standard for that. And we've been double, triple, quadruple taking in the past 24 hours going, what? No, come on, really. And no, they've managed it. It's an astonishing week for CIfA, the Chartered Institute for Archaeologists, and their relationship with their membership and also with the public. This all begins, doesn't it, Andy, with CIfA getting a new CEO, Nathan Baker, less than a year ago, in fact. Yeah.
Barely 8 months ago, in fact. Just allowing for a recruitment process, probably, just about a year. But actually, in terms of being in post, and we'll discuss what that means in a minute. But being at the helm of the representative body for Britain's professional archaeologists, the professional body for Britain's Institute for Britain's professional archaeologists.
Yeah, and
it's 8 months.
That is worthwhile just emphasising before we proceed. CIfA is a body who used to be known as IFA, the Institute of Field Archaeologists, I think, at one point. And then when
it first started,
and then it became the Chartered Institute for Archaeologists several years ago now. And this chartered status was one that was pursued for reasons of clout, for reasons of improving the relationship between archaeologists and their clients. And in that sense, CIfA wanted, and presumably still wants, to be one of the de facto ways that people can understand the value that archaeologists bring to a project. Their experiences and their abilities can be sort of quantified and backed up by having accredited status with CIfA, for example.
Perhaps I illustrate that by saying that other chartered professions include accountants. Let's talk about chartered accountants, and also surveyors, particularly in the building industry. So a chartered surveyor would work on buildings, and it's a mark of status. It's a mark of training. It's a mark of professional expertise.
Exactly, and it's also something which, in CIfA's case, has a relationship that's slightly different, though, to its practice, in so much as for CIfA as a charitable organisation as well, it's a body which draws in its coffers through paid membership, and which in recent months, certainly years as well, has been trying to demonstrate its value, I suppose, for those paying members. In some cases, with questionable outcomes. Some people, or increasingly people, are expressing frustration with the fact that they pay for membership and they're not necessarily getting support or perks or recognition that they otherwise might do. And what we're going to discuss today hasn't helped that perception. One person I saw online, for example, was saying that they're really only members of CIfA at the moment through a lack of basically through laziness. They can't be bothered not being a member, which again isn't great. But that conversation, that slight souring of the relationship between its members and it as an institute, especially over paying conditions and whether or not they would be putting in place recommendations for payment and remuneration levels, one of the ways that they sought to turn that souring around was through the announcement of bringing in this new CEO in the form of Nathan Baker.
That's right. Nathan Baker is not an archaeologist. He came to CIfA from outside of the profession. In fact, from an organisation, a research charity, a medical research charity called the Institute of Occupational Medicine.
Yeah.
That's right, which is a legacy of the coal industry. In fact, it was originally started as to research, for example, lung diseases among miners and so on. It's now it now has an extensive portfolio of interests across the health and safety realm, and deals with expert evidence and reporting and advocacy and so on. So although it's not directly applicable to archaeology, there are a lot of transferable areas of skill that Mr. Baker would bring to CIfA, which presumably is why the appointment was made.
Yeah, and that appointment was made and announced very, very positively, very hopefully. CIfA were very, in that sense, proud to unveil the new CEO that was appointed, and the direction of travel was one of towards a broader world for archaeology. In that sense, having experience come from outside the relatively small community that is professional archaeology in the UK, and opening it up to ways and practices that would be a benefit to the institute and its members. But yesterday, CIfA announced on their website, and I only heard about this because I saw someone comment on it, presumably having heard about it themselves from a Facebook group, and we'll come back to that in a second. I went looking for a statement from CIfA and found buried on their website, not immediately obvious in a news section, for example, a statement from Pen Foreman, the honorary chair of CIfA. This was published yesterday, Thursday, the 13th of February, 2025.
Here, I think it's worth saying Pen Foreman is a highly respected member of the profession. Mm-hmm. They, for example, chaired the members' meeting when CIfA were firefighting the row over withdrawing from offering recommended pay minimums and to going towards the setting of benchmarks, which you alluded to earlier. So this is somebody, somebody with some clout and some respect.
Yeah. And I won't read the whole statement. We'll link to it below. But they opened with a paragraph that said, Nathan Baker has stepped down from his role as Chief Executive Officer of CIfA. During his tenure, the Institute has expanded its focus from regulation to include more actively and positively supporting membership, or the membership. As a result, CIfA is well placed to become the professional home, that's in quotes, of archaeologists, offering whole life learning, advocacy, and confidence building services. Now, as you were quick to point out when I found this and forwarded it to you, it was quite vague in terms of the reasons for the CEO stepping down after a relatively short tenure of 8 months. And this sort of set your antennae twitching, did it not?
It did, because look, and again, we'll probably come back to this in the course of this conversation, but CIfA has a reputation for getting its comms, for awkward comms, if not getting it sometimes horribly wrong in terms of misreading what needs to be said.
Yeah, yeah.
And what this statement did, and it's not just me, you can see this kind of reaction coming up from actually CIfA members. So it's not just me with sort of journalistic antennae twitching. CIfA members were asking the same thing. Well, what's gone on here? Why? You announce a new broom, a bright new start, a move towards developing proper career paths for archaeologists which CIfA can support. And 8 months later, they're gone. And completely out of nowhere.
Yeah. And also without those sort of euphemistic phrases that we often see, like personal.
Spending more time with the family, that kind of thing.
Exactly. There was nothing even as vague as that. Yeah.
No. So and I think CIfA got this because you mentioned Facebook groups and so on. In fact, the statement was buried on the CIfA. I say buried. It's in a new sidebar. If you look at the PC version of the CIfA website, so it was there at the top of the new sidebar, but it's not given any prominence.
No. But also put it this way: a lot of people use their phones to look at websites. It's not obvious on the phone version of the website. So
no,
it's a formatting issue.
That's right. Yeah, and it would appear that CIfA also asked the British Archaeological Jobs Resource Facebook group, which is a very influential Facebook group. It has a lot of users, many of whom are CIfA members, and was heavily involved in that discussion that Penn Foreman chaired about pay minima. CIfA appear to have asked them to repeat the statement, which they did. Again, with as delivered, no judgments. And the immediate response was, again, what's gone on here? Is it a health issue? Has there been a falling out? So Penn Foreman went on to the CIfA group and added a
supplementary,
a sort of addendum, a supplementary, really explaining that. In fact, probably it's best if I just read it, so there's no confusion of the issue. What they said was, out of respect for his very private nature, I agreed not to state a reason in this statement, i.e. the statement that had been published on Badger and originally on the CIfA website. However, I can confirm that it is not related to the Institute itself. I hope that is reassuring, and we are relishing taking forward his excellent work and plans. So there again, there's a suggestion that, or at least you can certainly take that, and certainly members took it as there was some sort of personal issue, potentially a health issue or a family issue or something like that, which required Nathan Baker to step down, and that again would have been a perfectly legitimate situation. It's unfortunate that it wasn't included in the original statement, and it allowed room for some speculation.
And also, let's be really clear at this point. The Badger Facebook group, as influential as it is, has far fewer members than my own Facebook group, and I don't even post there anymore because Facebook is abandoning fact checking. And the CIfA Facebook group has even less members than that. So in terms of public comms for a chartered institute akin to surveyors and so on and so forth, this is not great. Again, it's very insular. It's very talking to other archaeologists, keeping it quiet, and not really being overtly public or even particularly straightforward in their communications. That's unfortunate. But then again, as we've talked about, that's an ongoing issue within archaeology world, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's as you say, it's the opposite to what you might expect from a national representative body engaged in public-facing work, where press release for immediate use. Notes to editors, none of that.
No.
It's sort of
or attached media, like here's a photo of the man, this kind of thing.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Instead, you get this piece of what is actually, to use a cliche, bombshell news for the profession, appearing out of nowhere on a Thursday afternoon and with no explanation. So the speculation just goes bouncing around the archaeological social media sphere until CIfA feels the need to add this supplementary, which
also raises more questions.
Precisely. Precisely.
Now, you and I obviously were curious about this and went looking for some additional information. At one point, I was suggesting that we actually reach out to Nathan himself directly, and due to a couple of aggregate websites that draw from sources such as LinkedIn, etc., and other public communication information, we got a personal email address which we haven't used. And we also were pointed to some of his previous email addresses. One of which was at IOM, the company that seemingly he was previously the CEO of.
The Institute of Occupational Medicine.
Yeah, but it gets a bit complicated from there, doesn't it?
Well, it gets more complicated, or it gets more confusing. So remember, the timeline is there's some sort of recruitment process for the CIfA CEO in early 2024, and it is announced
which is definitively long before December.
Absolutely.
I'll
come to that. Yeah. I'll come to that. Basically, CIfA advertised the post of chief executive.
Yeah.
They advertised it at up to £100,000. They advertised it as full-time or 4 days a week pro rata. And they advertised it as working from home, but with meetings all across the country.
Yeah.
So far, so pretty standard, actually.
Yeah.
And you'd expect somebody recruiting at that level to have to give at least 3 months notice unless they're currently working freelance.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're building in a timeline for the rest of the year, basically, for somebody being recruited, allowing time for the recruitment process and then taking up the post. Subsequently, they announce that Nathan Baker of the Institute of Occupational Medicine will take up the post as CEO of CIfA, and they appear to take up that post in June 2024. In September, there's a post on the CIfA Facebook page which refers to Nathan Jones's first 3 months in the role, and that it's been spent talking to members and stakeholders and developing a strategic plan that's approved by the governing board, and so on and so on and so on. Now, that was slightly odd in retrospect, because there was no welcome, hi, I'm Nathan press release, email release to members when he took on the role. The first real communication with members appears to be this this posting that's reported on Facebook. And in fact, a number of people commenting on that post are skeptical. People talk about platitudes. There's a certain lack of confidence in what CIfA are doing, certainly what CIfA are telling their members. In fact, somebody goes so far as to ask, did Nathan Baker even write it? Was it just issued in his name? And the moderators on the page say, no, absolutely, it's absolutely above board. This is his work. He's absolutely on board with everything, and everything's moving forward, and tickety-boo. And so again, this is very odd when we consider the news that dropped on Thursday afternoon that he was suddenly stepping down after barely 8 months in the role. Now, you talked about my sort of antenna twitching on all of this. There was a comment at the bottom of that thread from September that really leapt out at me, and it was added in January of this year, 2025. It was by somebody who appears not to be an archaeologist, but it said basically he might be busy at the Institute of Occupational Medicine. Now, that was a very specific, very barbed little dig. And it sounded to me, read to me, like somebody here knows something that's going on. So I went to the Institute of Occupational Medicine's website. And if you go to the Institute of Occupational Medicine's website, we'll link to it. And it's referred to in the Pipeline article, which I've written about this. You go to the section on people, and you find Nathan Baker, Chief Executive Officer, listed as still in post. Now, obviously, this raises an immediate question. Is he still in post?
Yeah, I mean, it could be an IT thing. Sometimes these things take time to update, and some people, frankly, never update their websites, do they? So, yeah.
And that was my first thought too. So I've got to verify that this is current information. I fired off an email to the IOM asking what was Nathan Baker's current status. I asked a similar question just to verify them before I sort of fired off the maroon and started asking CIfA all sorts of questions. And while I was waiting for an answer to that question, and I should just say for the moment, answer came there none, I started looking around for other mentions of Nathan Baker and his current activities.
And to be fair, this is not only is this is this the way we always work, but all the way through this process, it's clear that you, and then when you mentioned it, I were both constantly going, yeah, but he's not there anymore. That was his job. Like clearly, we were looking for any evidence that we were that website, for example, was incorrect or hadn't been updated in lieu of a direct answer. Yeah. So in that sense, we weren't looking to show that's the case. We were looking to check what actually is the case. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And the working, and don't forget, the working assumption based on what CIfA have said is that Nathan Baker is the Chief Executive Officer of CIfA.
Yeah.
And has been since June of 2024.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So, as I said, I was looking around for other evidence of Mr. Baker's activities. And on the Institute of Occupational Medicine's LinkedIn account, I found a flyer for a conference where Mr. Baker was a keynote speaker. It was an industry conference that took place at the Excel Centre in London, here in London, in December 2024. So only a couple of months ago.
And just to confirm, December comes after March.
And June and September.
June. Yes.
It's It's the last month of the year. It's the one when everyone, there are conferences and things in the run up to Christmas.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, so Nathan Baker is listed as a keynote speaker at this particular conference, and it's on the 4th of December. In fact, it was 11:10 in the morning on the 4th of December, 2024. And he's delivering this keynote speech, and he's billed as the CEO IOM, not CEO CIFA,
No.
CEO Institute of Occupational Medicine. Now, obviously, that is a direct contradiction of the role, appears to be in direct contradiction of the role that CIfA claim he has.
Yes.
And not only is he billed as the CEO in the LinkedIn account, the IOM saying they're proud that he's delivering this speech at this important industry conference. So there's absolutely no question. And in fact, the picture that's used on the conference flyer is a crop of a picture that appears both on the IOM website and on the CIfA website when they're talking about Mr. Baker. So there's absolutely no, this is absolutely the same person.
This isn't another Nathan Baker.
No, this is absolutely the same person. They're even using the same publicity photo.
Yeah, because I suppose it's possible that the Institute of Occupational Medicine could hire another Nathan Baker. They just like to hire Nathan Baker, but that's not.
It's a bit like Zorro. There's every generation has its own new Zorro.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
every generation, every research charity has its own Nathan.
Yeah, but that's not the case. Yeah.
That's not the case. We're dealing with the same person, and so you've got somebody who appears to be simultaneously the CEO of two professional academic and research-based charities. And so the immediate question is, how the heck did this happen?
Yeah. A watching brief is a formal program of observation and investigation to record and report on notable discoveries on an archaeological site. As part of our ongoing watching brief, Andy and I work hard to bring you the best, the worst, and sometimes the more quirky happenings from the world of archaeology. We aim to provide a space where voices can be heard, opinions shared, and sometimes truth spoken to power. If you believe in the work we do, please consider supporting us on Patreon for as little as $1 per month. Thank you. I have a few hypotheticals and questions to go through with you, but it's worthwhile saying from the outset, there's actually not necessarily anything wrong with that being the case of the case. It's entirely possible to have someone who is essentially acting as an advisory CEO and splitting their time between two different groups. It's interesting though in this instance because that though was not remotely made clear if it is the case. And again, we're dealing with who knows because CIfA haven't got back to us, and they've been deliberately guarded in their communications so far and in the wording of those press releases. And also we haven't heard back from IOM yet either. Hopefully we will hear back from both and we'll report back to you when we do.
I go so far to say it's actually relatively common, particularly when you've got somebody with a well-established in a well-established organisation who's acting as a consultant and a mentor to one that's undergoing organisational development, and that's the situation CIfA was in. It is.
However, this is not how they announced his role. This is not how they announced and welcomed him into that role within CIfA, and therefore introduced him to the membership. It was not clear. So and in that sense, if CIfA knew, the first question is, why didn't they make it clear from the outset? This is what's going on, either for budgetary reasons or because this guy is such good value for money. This is what we're doing. Now, at that point, I'll come back to whether they knew or not. At that point, there's a question of pay. The job, as you say, was advertised at around about up to £100,000 a year. And the question would be, if he is being employed on a 2, 3, 4 days a week basis and sharing his time with another body, is his pay reflecting that? Is it part, a fraction of the 100,000 instead of being the whole lot. Now, again, that's a question mark, and one that may well be a case of, well, actually, again, he represented such great value for money that this is what his pay was, and we were happy to have him on that shared basis. Yeah. Now, whether CIfA knew of this arrangement, we don't know. That is to say, at this stage, they could have announced him in place as the CEO for them and no one else, without knowing that he was doing something else. Again, we do not know what's going on there. And I suppose one final question that it raises for me is, what does it say about CIfA's attitude to the role, and also arguably to themselves, that they were willing to have essentially what we're calling a part-time CEO on that basis? I suppose you could flip that question on its head and say, what does it mean to people outside of professional archaeology that they think that CIfA only requires them for a couple of days a week? But it is a question of why not someone in place full time in that sense. Now, those are the only questions that have just come to my mind over the past 24 hours or so that I think warrant thinking about, and possibly even hopefully getting an answer to from CIfA. But what do you think? I know that I'm seeing members shrugging and going, well, what do you expect? And again, that's not a great look for this chartered body.
No. And I think we should just fill in one of the other blanks, which is that according to CIfA's statement of yesterday, the organisation is now being helmed by Alex Llewellyn, who's the current director of membership of CIfA, and Kate Geary, who is the director of learning and skills at CIfA. Both, again, very respected members of the profession. They're acting up at the moment as interim co-CEOs. Now, having said that, this is clearly a back of a fag packet arrangement. This wasn't planned. There doesn't appear to have been any succession planning.
No.
And then while we're on questions, I'll just pose one more, which again I can't answer until we get some more information back from CIfA or the IOM, which is Pen Foreman's statement said that the reason that Mr. Baker was stepping back from the role wasn't to do with the institute, the implication of the institute being CIfA. So if it wasn't CIfA, logically it was a third party, and the most obvious third party is the IOM. And whether the IOM found the arrangement wasn't tenable from their point of view, whatever the arrangement was, is a hypothetical possibility.
Well, and again, at that point, we have to point to the fact that neither IOM or CIfA have talked about having a shared CEO, and he doesn't seem to talk about it either. No. And in that sense, I mean, I likened it with you earlier to a bad soap opera where someone's like, he's told me he's going to leave his wife for me, this kind of thing, as though hopefully if it was an arranged situation, then well, no, see, that's the problem. That's the problem. See, because if there had been arrangement of, okay, we'll borrow your services for a certain amount of time, and then you'll go back to that other role in a full capacity, then why wasn't this planned for ahead of time? If this was always going to happen, if he was going to move back to being fully involved with that previous role, why, as you say, have two people acting up now instead of having someone actually recruited? So, and if
it was going to be a shared role, had it continued, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Would anybody have ever noticed?
Yeah.
So,
is it also fair just to ask, and is that okay?
Right.
Is it okay that members presume they have a CEO who's just there all the time when actually they're doing it essentially part-time?
That's a separate question to the question of whether it's a legitimate arrangement. It's obviously a legitimate arrangement. Two organisations or an individual on a freelance basis with the knowledge or permission of one of their other principal employers, but give some of their time to another organisation. This is absolutely common, particularly in areas like charities. There's a whole circuit of consultants who advise on things like, as we said earlier, like things like corporate development and governance and so on.
But in that sense,
so
if his time split is 60-40, how, is that value for money for someone paying full membership fees?
Well, I would say to you, it depends on what the role is and how much commitment that role requires. It's perfectly possible to imagine a CEO role, but where on a relatively in a relatively small company where it can be accomplished on a few days a week. So it's not necessarily, it's certainly not illegal, nefarious, or anything like that.
No.
In fact, it's relatively commonplace across the charitable sector. But I think the issue here is that one of transparency. It is that one of what was actually being sold to the membership, and was it actually what they'd actually bought?
Precisely. Yeah, that's what I'm getting at, and especially when there's been so much room for presumptions to be made, and people being allowed to make those presumptions. I can't help but ask, what does it mean for how CIfA view themselves as much as anything else, and also their ambition, their pride, for want of a better word. I guess the question is, what happens next? We've plumbed new depths in weird comms issues in UK archaeology management, institutional groups, and so on and so forth. Are we hoping to get a response? Are we likely to get a response? Do we need a response? What do you think is going to happen next?
I mean, in the end, I hope there will be a response. More than anything, I hope that CIfA members, as they find out what's happened here, what appears to have happened here, ask their own board what happened, how did it happen, what has actually been going on for the last 8 monts, and more particularly, what are you going to do going forward? Is there going to be another recruitment process, and how quickly? Now, I think the other thing we have to say is that in terms of the mood music, in terms of the background, this couldn't come at a worse moment for the leadership of British archaeology. It's CIfA's particular role is with professional archaeology and archaeologists within the development system, the developer-funded system. And at the moment, in March, the government is going to publish, or said it's going to publish, its new planning bill, which could, I emphasise could, have a major impact on the role of archaeology within the development system. There's a lot of pressure to reduce, quotes, red tape, costs on developers, and it might introduce changes in the way and the amount of archaeology that's done. And CIfA should be at the forefront of lobbying government, talking to government, explaining to government what the implications of certain proposals might be.
And clear communication, analysis, advocacy.
Absolutely, advocacy, and also making that advocacy available to the wider public that cares about archaeology too. And as of yesterday afternoon, there is no obvious leadership in CIfA, apart from obviously two co-CEOs who are very capable people, but like most members of boards, they're volunteers, they're not full-time. To be frank,
And if I was a political operator in this instance, looking in, technically speaking, as of yesterday, not only is there no one in charge, but technically speaking, we don't know if the organisation knew their status.
Yes.
So, and that's again, from the outside looking in, it's a shambles. It's not great.
Absolutely, and add to the government issues things like the current devastation in the humanities, including archaeology in UK higher education. You earlier today you forwarded me the latest piece from Durham's University newspaper talking about cuts at Durham.
200 staff,
200 staff at the moment in professional services, but probably more academics in future. We last time out we covered the situation at Cardiff with Flint Dibble. So that is going on as well. That affects strategically that affects the pipeline of new archaeologists, because we're still a 98% graduate profession. And you just as I say, the to-do list for whoever is CEO of CIfA is a big one, and it's a very consequential one potentially for the sector. So this is really suboptimal, I think the phrase is.
Well, and crucially, what we need to have people whose first instinct is to be clear and to communicate in an open way what their intentions are and how they're going to go about getting to that vision. And so far, over the past 3 years, we've had various instances where people in similar situations, similar levels rather, of import for the sector, their instinct is to be quiet, is to keep stuff close to the chest, is to not be clear, not have a vision that's publicly communicated, and therefore that no one can help to support. And this is why I spent much of yesterday going, no, this can't be real. This is, come on, and especially when I first was looking to reach out, when we were first looking to reach out to Nathan, and some of that initial contact info came up, one of which still being alive from the Institute for Occupational Medicine. I just dismissed it out of, I thought it's not going to be a thing. It's not a thing, but it is. And the only reason why this is a story, the only reason why this is potentially an issue is either through complete lack of clarity, or through someone's gross incompetence in terms of understanding what was unfolding within their organization and presumably under their nose. But we don't know because of that first problem. And the same goes for you at home, folks. You if you're interested in what we have to say, presumably you're interested in what CIfA might have to say on things. And in this instance, once again, I think that their instinct hasn't served them well, shall we say?
I think that's a very legitimate conclusion to draw. I mean, there's a sort of rule in PR, isn't there, that there are two things that are really bad to do. The second worst is to issue a statement that promotes more questions than it answers. And the worst thing to do is to then attempt to qualify the statement that you've just issued that raises more questions than it answers, because that raises even more questions. And that's what's happened here. Yeah.
Well, and crucially, the risk of that sort of strategy is that it introduces the possibility that people get an insight into how you think about them as an audience. If you know what I mean. Well, we thought we could say this to you because we didn't want you to think that. That's the sort of knots that organizations get themselves tied up in when they try to either when an organization is trying to be too clever for its own good, or when they're trying to be stoic and stonewall and just ignore things and things will go away. Both strategies have the same potential pitfalls, and I'm just a bit. We both say to each other quite a lot now these days, don't we? I just want to be able to report on the great things that the sector is doing. I just want to be able to go. I mean, you were talking about, there's a Roman mosaic, isn't there, that's been uncovered?
It's parts of the Roman Basilica, in fact, in the city of London, just up the road from where I'm sitting now. Yeah. It's a great story. The BBC reported it earlier.
There's a wonderful photo
week
with the shard in the background that's been shared.
Yeah. Oh, that's a separate one in Southwark.
Yet another one.
Yes,
they're coming up everywhere.
Southwark is the Hollywood of Roman London in terms of upmarket accommodation.
Okay.
But it's Beverly Hills. But Beverly Hills, Rome.
Yeah.
No, in all seriousness, there's a cracking story that the BBC broke with where they worked with Museum of London Archaeology, MOLA, who are doing a major digging the site of a major development in the City of London. It proved the site of the Roman walls in the Roman Basilica. They were already known from the 19th century, but it was confirmed with modern measured with modern spatial technology and all the good things that expert urban archaeology can deliver. And as a consequence, the developer is working with the Corporation of the City of London and MOLA and Historic England to preserve the best of the archaeology and present it to the public, having adapted their plan.
Brilliant. Really good. Yeah.
So it's absolutely it's a textbook case in how archaeology can add value.
And I suppose,
and yet at the end of the week, when that story breaks, we're talking about this.
Yeah, and I suppose people at home, just briefly, might say, well, why don't you just talk about that and not talk about the other stuff? And the reason why we talk about the other stuff is because it's important. It's the stuff that's happening with the vision for the future of the sector, with a long-standing undelivered sense of career path for young archaeologists, and other similar issues. Means that good news in archaeology and good discoveries happen despite those structures, not because of them. And I just want to see those structures buoying up and supporting even more great work, and meaning that we can say hand on heart, yes, absolutely, definitely, come and be an archaeologist. It's fantastic. But those structures and their instincts and the way that they tend to not always cover themselves in glory means that we can't, hand on heart, always say archaeology is fantastic, come and be an archaeologist, even though the archaeology is fantastic. And I'm sure those archaeologists digging in Southwark and elsewhere, are having a great time. So yeah, it's a dichotomy, but it's one that hopefully you guys at home understand why it's crucial to keep on insisting that people who want to have certain responsibilities actually are able to do those jobs in a way which is expected, I guess.
I mean, there's one other thing I'd just like to mention in connection with the way the information that we have had from CIfA. And it has a bearing, I think, on the kind of organisation that CIfA is. It's for the sector, it's relatively small. It relies heavily for its expertise on volunteers, including in the board and heading up its various committees and so on, and taking part in its various committees. In terms of administration, it is relatively small, but I think there are questions about, and again, this is not a criticism of individuals. It's more to do with perhaps attitude and professionalism. Now, again, I'm not impugning people's professionalism, but it's whether they're actually being supported to express that professionalism properly.
Yeah.
Now, and the reason I
go
well, can I just say that the reason I ask that is in the discourse on Badger, there was an issue of how CIfA and CIfA staff communicate with members and the fact they don't appear to engage on platforms like Badger routinely. And in response to that question, Pen Foreman, again, honorary chair, highly respected, said, I'm happy to pass on comments to the staff where necessary, but we're setting some boundaries about social media use outside of official CIfA channels after a few issues last year, with a focus on capacity and well-being. As chair, the CEO is mine and the board's responsibility, and I'm happy to field this one.
They write on a third party's Facebook group.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. but I think the boundaries about social media use outside of official CIfA channels, with a focus on capacity. Now, yes, everybody knows that maintaining social media takes work, and it takes specialist knowledge. But you would have thought that for what is in many ways a virtual organization, it's an office, as we saw the CEO was advertised as a post where you work from home, that actually monitoring social media, engaging with social media, at least knowing what was going on in social media, would be absolutely central to working out effective strategies. And what is, I think the use of the word well-being is quite concerning. Obviously, again, any organisation has to have a view, must have a effective
safeguarding,
health, safety, and safeguarding well-being structures in place. But does that, is that well-being, is that safeguarding extending to not engaging with legitimate arguments, other people's opinions outside of the CIfA tent, or the CIfA management tent? It may well not be that, but again, it's an ambiguous statement which leads that the organisation open to that kind of question. And I say that's not a criticism of Ben Foreman or any of the staff, but there are things about. Look, this whole story is about opaque communications, if the communications exist at all, and then the sense of working out what happens next on the back of the proverbial fag packet. And I think what it does ultimately is show, if the CEO role that Nathan Baker was recruited to undertake, advise on, create a plan, whatever it was about organizational development and developing effective professional structures. And I think what this story shows is quite how necessary they are for CIfA.
And I'll just add one sentence to that. There's an inherent irony there when the Chartered Institute for Archaeologists needs to develop professional structures and to develop a confidence in its own existence. There's something needs to change. There you go, folks. That's been a watching brief. It certainly came out of nowhere yesterday, and I'm glad that we were able to pull this together at relatively short notice. Obviously, we'll keep you guys up to speed at home on any responses that do come to our queries. But over the weekend, we shan't be holding our breath, shall we say? Because it is the weekend, and maybe it won't come until Monday. Who knows? If you have any insights, thoughts, or ideas about what you'd like us to cover in the near future, please do comment below or reach out to us via DMs. My DMs are open, Andy's are open, and also on the Pipeline News website there is a drop as a tip as a top story type situation. You can click there, and these are ways and means of being able to pass on information in a way that protects your identity as well, if needs be. So do bear that in mind. Do also consider supporting us on Patreon, and also check out Andy's Ko-fi account, because all of this frantic rushing around, being journalistic types, it takes time, and in that sense,
and a lot of coffee.
Yeah. In that sense, your support is most certainly welcome. As it says here, I run on coffee. But coffee to one side. Also, as well, do check out the Etsy store where you can get the Watching Brief pin badge set. Well worth a purchase. And,
which, if I remember rightly, if on the Patreon, new Patreons actually get a complimentary set of pin badges, if I remember rightly.
Yes, they do indeed. Yeah.
There you go.
Absolutely.
So you can no longer be quietly baffled. You can, as an archaeologist, you can show the entire world.
Yep, and and also as well, there were a couple of other designs that we're working on, and hopefully will be going up this year as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see what happens next in 2025, I suppose. Until next time,
It's
though.
been a quiet start, hasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. No. Until next time, do take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.